Hello? One? Yes. Okay, thank you. My name is Charlie. I'm presenting Interplanetary Mind Map. It's the first time we kind of exposing something we've been working with Danny, which is over there. And I think it's more a conversation than an actual project. So we feel that right now our own growth is limited by the capacity that we have for managing information. I use managing very loosely here, but the idea of managing, it includes verifying information, processing, visualizing, understanding, connecting, sharing, accessing information, right? It's a lot of things, right? But unless we have the tools or the ecosystem and environment that allows us to manage information in a way that fulfills our own very unique needs, the way that our brain works, our mind works, I think we'll always have a block there that won't allow us to fulfill our maximum potentials as human beings. So, can anyone tell me like what these three things have in common that is very, very bad? It's more like a joke, right? But the idea is like, those are tools for consensus. In this paradigm that we're trying to open, consensus is not a constraint, right? Like if you need to think based on what tools that others have set up, on language that others have set up, that will never, it will always be a compromise in the way, like for you, because your mind works differently, right? So one of the main statements or the main premise that we're working on is like, we want our own truth, right? And I think this reflects very well what we're talking about, right? That there is no absolute truth, it doesn't exist, right? The thing in the middle is the truth, but this is true and this is also true, right? And this is also true, right? And this is also true, right? So there is as many truths as perspective, as humans, as minds, right? So, while someone could say that Wikipedia is a truth, or dictionary is a truth, those are just like consensus, like it's one truth, right? What we want is a tool that allows my own truth. I want to build my own reality. I want to map the world, the complexity around me, in a way that I understand, right? And I don't need to do compromises around that. So, if we want to get there at some point, that's like, you know, like a nice idea, right? The base piece of data, the base piece that we're working on is a blob of data, right? Let's assume that one of these bubbles, it's a blob. If we want to start constructing this system that represents my own truth, the minimum thing I need to do is to be able to connect two blobs of data, right? So, there's this idea of a semantic triplet, which is a subject, object, predicate. It's a simple way to connect two pieces of information, right? There's a subject, which is, sorry, the main piece of information, and there is an object, which is who is it relating to. And the arrow in between is the predicate. It is how is it connecting it, right? This has been used in the web semantics, the semantic web with RDF. It's used in linguistics, and it's kind of like a very like simple primitive to build all that. The thing is like with the web semantics, for example, this was like location address, right? So it's very limited what can be. But now these two dots could be anything. It can be a hash, like we're content addressing here. So I can just relate any two pieces of information that exist in the world, doesn't matter where they are, right? I can say, hey, I understand this in this way. And we can do the same with the thing in the middle, the predicate. I can tell how are they connected. And this is just another hash, right? It could be a verb, it could be something I made up, it could be a function. It could be a function that could take these two things as input and get me an output, right? And like in the past, we've been trying to create an ontology for these things, right? What we want here is each of us should be able to create its own ontology. I want to decide what this thing is. It could be anything, right? Just a hash. And this is important if we ever want to build like systems that really like are for myself, for my mind. So if we now take these basic primitives and I just started making connections about everything, I could start mapping my world. I can start describing how things fit, right? And let's say that this is the subject. If I put enough associations about this subject, I basically create a definition of this subject is, right? I could make like a lot of connections of this car. You can say it's blue, you can say it's speed, you can say it's a Lambo. And at some point, there will be my own definition. And I can reference these definitions. That means, like, I could, for example, write a blog post. Now. So when I'm writing a blog post, I have to give a lot of context because there is a wide public and they don't know exactly what I'm talking about. So if I mention Ethereum, what is it? It's like the mainnet, is a protocol, is a currency, is a foundation. There is ambiguity there, right? And that's because we're using words. And words it's something that comes from a dictionary. It's ambiguous. While we kind of end up with a consensus, it's not fully defined. But here I could use my own definition of Ethereum, right? I could point exactly to what I mean for Ethereum, and no one can negate that, right? So, like, how much energy could we save just communicating if we just say exactly what we want and we don't need to give consensus and it was not ambiguous, right? So if we keep building this graph, we end up something like, basically it's your idea of the world, your mind map, right? Like it's how you understand reality, it's your model of the world, which is like connections everywhere, right? And it's basically your identity. Like now there's a lot of talk about sovereign identity. So this is like, sovereign identity is like a subset of these, right? It's just attestations that an identity will go on top of another. This is just everything. But that doesn't mean that we'll have to like define everything. That seems like a lot of work. But I could just point out to other people's mind map, like where I have this mind map of myself. Why should I like make reference of Ethereum to whatever you think as Ethereum is, right? Like by using non-mutable data like ENS or IPFS, we could have these kind of connections, right? So basically you end up creating this curated set of information, right? Which is very little because it's meant to serve you. But now you can use someone else curated information. And curated information is just about everything in this world. Like Spotify is just a curated list, Airbnb is a curated list, GitHub is a curated list of code, right? All these services are just information curated. But we now, like, if we let's say we have a topology similar to the Web of Trust or secure stable lot, right? Where the connection, the peers that I'm referring to are like trusted because they have some sort of merit, they have some sort of trust, right? We end up with a very beautiful system where you can, you don't need to go to Google to find like what restaurant is around. You're just gonna ask the people you know that you trust and that they have curated what kind of restaurants are good here in Barcelona, right? And because we are owners of this data, you can like set up all sorts of business models, etc. on top of here, right? So I think that's as much time I have. Like as I said, like this is more like a conversation and a mumbling about like how we could do like if we have like such a system. But we want to keep this conversation, right? Like we believe it's an important conversation to have. And we invite you all to participate. I think there is we have a report where we do experiments and we try to compile similar projects or things that we believe are relevant to this conversation. I just invite you to it. I don't know if there's any question.
I'm known for asking questions. So, in the semantic web, it's really this model of turtles all the way down that's going to be the reference. And when you get to the bottom of the turtle, it's Tim Berners-Lee. And as long as you agree with Tim Berners-Lee said in 1999, you're good. So how do you have a personalized mind map that does this semantic interoperability? So when I talk about a car, we talk about a car. Because in the end, a lot of the semantic web have an authoritative source. W3C.org was Tim's example. So in the content addressable IPFS world, how do you get to your world of what a car is in your mind map?
I'm not sure if I got it right, but one of the things that we're like praying for here is like we don't want interoperability in this sense, right? Like this is to serve the mind, it's not to serve the vendor browsers that need some way to agree in some way to understand the web. Is that, am I responding?
Yeah, so it's just your mind. It's your self.
It's your mind. At least this is the base. At least is the base premise. I think there's tons of ways you can make it compatible, right? And the beauty of like Interplanetary Mind Map is when everyone has its own mind map, right? And now we can connect them all, right?
If you make value in creating these mind maps, I think, or we believe that in a more organic way, you're going to start connecting what you mean by car with what I mean by car. Right. And it's not something that we need to deal at the beginning to create an ontology that is fixed and rigid, and we'll have to kill this first defined ontology. We believe that is something that could be grown in a more organic way, and in a somehow, or we are exploring these ideas that each mind map it's a perspective, it's a reality, and if you start using other people's point of views, which is something totally natural that we are doing constantly, we are not creating everything from scratch, we are using pieces from other people. So we are creating this information through layers, and little by little, from a more humane point of view, we are connecting it in a more slow way. I don't know if this gonna solve the full interconnected system or not in the future, but I think that is a first step.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to clarify like what you meant, but I guess maybe you answered it. It's just like, is it a collection of ontologies, or you create your own ontology?
You create your own ontology, right? By defining how things relate to each other, you create your own ontology.
Okay, but it's like resolvable, you can resolve these different ontologies.
The idea will be, yeah, you will end up creating your own graph, right? So, and then someone could subscribe to a branch of my graph, right? So if I'm like very into like sushi, and I just keep, building up this curated list of how sushi works in Barcelona, someone could subscribe to this, and with just a pop-up system, you could get updates on when I do changes, right? And
Do you think it could be enforce like tribalism?
Tribalism? I think, yes. I think that's actually like the main thing, right? Like when you have something like the web of trust, it's more closer to tribalism than mass media, right? Like that's what we want. Like at least that's what I want. Like mass media for me, it's like has no value, right? Like there's so, all the problems with centralization, right? So this is the way to force a more human way of connecting and expressing, which is more analogic. It's like, hey, I'm meeting with you guys because the physicality here and the connection here, it's some sort of merit. Is it like I know you're on my tribe of IPFS, right? So I trust it.
I would agree. I think